Hello and welcome to a jam-packed hour of Nottinghamshire news, sport and chat. On the way, the 81-year-old man from Bulwell scammed by a dodgy gardener.
And he told me he'd knock me £200 off, and then he said that'll make it £2,300.
There's more than 100 jobs created in Clifton as a brand new Lidl opens its doors.
It's so exciting to see the shop opening. Obviously it's created lots of new jobs here in Clifton, but it's improved the retail offer. It makes Clifton an even better place to live and work.
And with a Nottinghamshire restaurant named among the top 5 in the UK, we are asking you, where's your top spot for nosh in Notts?
The Ferry Inn, which is in Wilford, and it serves the bestest, biggest steak that you've ever had in your life.
And alongside me to get through all that and more is a stellar spooky pairing who are making me feel very underdressed. Let her entertain you. It's spooky tour guide and storyteller Kath George. And he's cool with the ghouls, the founder of the Nottingham Ghost Walk, David Cross. We're kicking off with a non-spooky scary topic first. We're starting with your favourite school subjects. A YouGov poll has looked into the difference between which subjects boys and girls aged between 6 and 15 prefer. The study found that boys enjoy computing and PE, whereas girls prefer arts and music the most. Kath, you were completely the other side of things, weren't you?
Absolutely. Couldn't stand music and couldn't be doing my art either. I like my history. I like my biology and my science. I did like science subjects, anything scientific.
What do you think that was then? What was it that turned you off about the arts and music?
But just at the age I was at, I was just more interested in. I mean, I love art now. I work in art galleries, as you know, and I love music.
You've got an interesting take on this, David, because when you were picking your subjects, you weren't given much choice. You had to choose.
I wasn't, no. In my particular school, from the second year, which I was 12 in the second year, you had to choose either sciences or the arts. So I had to drop history, geography, music, art, all that kind of stuff in favour of the sciences from age 12, which I think was a disservice.
Oh, really?
Looking back. Oh, yeah. I think a much broader education for longer is much better. Yeah, you get too focused in one direction, I think.
There are places that do that. I'm thinking of things like the International Baccalaureate. I know in France they have a similar thing where you pick like a stream of subjects almost. Do you not think there's maybe a benefit, David, in being more focused?
Not from such a low age, because at 12, I mean, you know, you're still growing up. I mean, maybe 15, 16, you're getting an idea of what you're into and what you're good at and whatever. At 12, it's like, well, if you want to do those, you can't do all of them. Well, can't I do a bit of everything, you know, for a while till I pick, oh, no, you've got to pick, oh, okay. And then you're set forever.
Mm. You set on a pathway from the age of 12 and you think, you know what, I'm not sure I like physics. I'm not picking on physics, by the way. Kath, if you were going to go again and pick the subjects, would you do it differently? Would you?
No, I'd have still done the
Really?
same subject, yeah. Because just absolutely, we were just given a list of subjects to pick. And I picked all the things I was interested in, and I'm still interested in them now. I would have liked to have done other things as well. I mean, I did drama at school and had an amazing drama instructor at school, who I've always been very grateful to for the education and things he taught me.
You're lucky enough to still be in love with the subjects you liked then.
I've just been blessed all my life with being able to do what I like, really.
Yeah. What a lucky woman. We've been asking you, what were your favourite subjects at school and why? Were you a physics fanatic or were you mad about maths?
Art, because it was the only thing I was any good at. I was no good at maths or a lot of the other subjects, but art I wasn't bad at.
Like history, I always found history very engaging and relevant, and I found it a bit more exciting than other subjects, wars and battles and power struggles and so forth. And I suppose I like the teacher too.
Oh, music, because I'm a musician, studying my music. Was always allowed in the studio to mess around on my own on a guitar and all that sort of stuff.
Languages I was really good at, but yeah, I'd say mathematics I was good at, but I had to work really hard at, as you know, who doesn't, you know, especially when there's algebra involved, right, apparently.
Science, I'm interested in things to do with space and to do with the universe. And
I love that we caught a human statue and I love that he likes science. He's not in for the arty stuff, he loves science. David, would you change things if you had another go?
I'd like to do more subjects for longer, yes. Yeah, I think to be just doing sciences from age 12 is madness, yeah. I've missed out on so much, which is why, you know, since I've done my own thing with history, you know, because it's one of my passions, but I couldn't do it at school.
Two people following their passions, good to see. Next, this morning, a brand new Lidl opened in Clifton just a couple of years after locals petitioned for a low-cost supermarket in the area. The store's created more than 100 jobs. Danielle Hall went along as the doors opened for the first time.
I'm genuinely really excited to declare this Lidl store open. Woo-hoo!
As the ribbon was cut, the wait was finally over for the people of Clifton. No sooner were the doors open than you descended to try and bag yourself some bargains. The store has created 130 jobs and has been something that Cliftonians have been waiting for years.
Clifton residents have been telling me, well, for as long as I've been the MP, that they wanted a better range of shops. A couple of years ago, we put a petition on our website saying, please can we get a low-cost supermarket in Clifton? It went mad. Within a couple of hours, we had hundreds of signatures, and I wrote to Lidl, and they said, yes, we'd really like to come. Obviously, we've now got this retail development at Clifton Triangle. And it's so exciting to see the shop opening. Obviously, it's created lots of new jobs here in Clifton, but it's improved the retail offer. It makes Clifton an even better place to live and work.
Amongst the crowds at the opening of the store this morning were the Mayor of Nottingham and our very own Robin Hood.
I think areas certainly like Clifton and other areas, Bulwell, Beeston, that have had Lidl's opening, have found a real sort of renovation. Certainly the business model that Lidl works really well in communities like this, and of course it attracts other businesses as well. So actually we're really hoping that this opening here is going to do a lot of good for Clifton and indeed the surrounding villages.
As more and more of you head for your weekly shop, what do you think of the new store?
Oh, they needed it quite a lot. There's only one big store here, and that's Morrison's. So to have a bit of competition and a bit more variety is a godsend, really.
We were planning on moving out of Clifton because there was nothing here, but since B&M and Lidl's come, we've now decided we might as well stop local.
There's no real good shops down there, you know what I mean? It's okay, but it's the same old every time you come down.
Now the new shop is opened, the focus shifts to plans for other developments in Clifton.
Well, the next thing that's going to happen here actually is the creation of some new flats at the end on the further side of the development. We really need more housing in Clifton, so that's the next thing. But apart from that, it's out back talking to residents, listening to what they want, and then working with my local Labour councillor colleagues to deliver on those needs.
Danielle Hall for Notts TV.
Now for a look at something coming up later in the show, you'll hear from the 81-year-old Bulwell man targeted by a dodgy gardener.
Well, I was absolutely shocked. You know, at that time I was suffering from a heart problem, and I just didn't know what to say. Being elderly and partly disabled, I needed a little bit of assistance in my garden now. I've got quite a big back garden. Somebody gave me a leaflet, a professional looking job, a glossy leaflet, advertising gardening at a it said it was at a reasonable rate.
They'll look for telltale signs, they'll share lists of people who they know are elderly and vulnerable, they'll look for overgrown gardens, they'll look for grab rails on people's property, you know, maybe it's the property's in slight disrepair.
Danielle Hall's here now with more news headlines.
First, police have arrested 5 teenagers on suspicion of murder. The boys aged 17, 16 and 3 14-year-olds were apprehended after an incident on Hawksley Road in Hyson Green yesterday. The victim was a man who was stabbed before being taken to hospital, where he died soon after. Police believe the attack was an isolated incident and don't see any further threat to the public. A burglar caught red-handed in her victim's bedroom has been locked up for 2.5 years. Lillian Caddis pleaded guilty to burglary, credit card theft and fraud by false representation. The occupants of the home found Caddis in her bedroom, who told them she was hiding because her boyfriend was outside trying to beat her up. The woman noticed her bank card was missing and called the police. Officers say they've made tackling burglary a priority. Notts County defender Matt Tootles opened up about his compulsive gambling addiction. The Magpies player took to Twitter to admit it's been a problem since he was 16, describing it as an illness that's led to some of his worst memories. He's now not gambled for a month. He says gambling addiction is rife in football and has called for something to be done. A new state-of-the-art fire station has opened in Newark. It replaces an older firefighting facility which had been built in the early 1960s. The new building is set to last for another 50 years, with officers saying it shows the service's commitment to the area. The station is now home to 60 staff and to 2 fire engines as well. Next, an unlikely award for a Nottinghamshire politician. Dogs belonging to Nottingham North MP Alex Norris have won this year's Westminster Dog of the Year competition. The Labour MP's Border Collies, called Boomer and Corona, scooped the prize, seeing off stiff competition from Mansfield MP Ben Bradley's dog Dexter, and from a dog named after Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn's owner, if you're wondering, is on the Labour benches. Let's take a look at the weather now. Tonight should stay mostly dry, despite any rain you've seen this afternoon and this evening. There'll be overnight lows of a chilly 6 degrees. Tomorrow is bright and sunny, but not too warm. There'll be highs of a moderate 16 degrees and a fair amount of wind around too. It will get cloudier as the day wears on and into the evening. Saturday's a real mixed bag. There's plenty of rain around, but a decent amount of sun too, particularly around midday, Owen.
Brilliant. I love a bit of sun, Danielle, so that sounds like great news. When we come back, when have you been caught red-handed on your phone when you should have been doing something entirely different? And could Nottingham Forest be about to swoop for a talented Argentine? Certainly hope so. Welcome back to your top spot for all things Notts. Alongside me this evening are 2 historical talents. Her history is no forge. It's tour guide Kath George. And his words will have you at a loss. It's founder of the Nottingham Ghost Walk, David Cross. Now, have you ever been caught on your phone when you really shouldn't have been? Just days into his new presenting job on Channel 5, Jeremy Vine looked like he made a slip-up live on air when he appeared to be occupying himself with his phone instead of presenting. A member of the audience was then seen to be playing on their phone and did what turned out in the end to be a skit. But it got us thinking about phone stories when people have been playing around on the phone when they really should have been doing something else. I look at the two of you and I think maybe you've experienced this as tour guides. David, are you chuckling?
Yes, indeed. I mean, like Kath, we always ask people to switch their phones off to start with, but you know, even if they put them on silent, it's something, because people use their phones to take pictures, which is fantastic. But it's when they start doing emails and answering, and particularly if it rings and what, you know, and it's like, you know, it makes you want to thump them. But you know, if there's 20, 30 people there, obviously, you know, what can you do? But yeah, sometimes I mean, I have. On occasion, I have had very sharp words with people, but generally speaking, people are okay. But it's so annoying.
I'll never forget a story someone told me about a friend who was sitting a driving test up in North Notts, and they were doing the driving test, and they got a phone call halfway through. They picked up and answered the phone on their driving test, at which point the driving instructor took control, slammed the handbrakes on, grabbed the car keys, and I think he walked back to the test centre. But Kath, what are your experiences of people, you know, disturbing you with their phone?
Well, it's different for me because I actually encourage people to use their phones to take photographs, especially when we're doing the ghost walks around Newstead or Woollerton, somewhere like that, and I actually get them to download ghost hunting apps as well, just for a bit of fun. So as long as the volume is turned down, and they're just snapping pictures or playing with it, and it makes quite an interactive thing as well. If somebody catches something on their phone, it's an immediate reaction, you know, and it's sort of
smudge or something.
Yeah, absolutely. It is annoying if you're doing a town tour, like David said. You've got enough distraction with road sweepers following you around, and
they do it to you as well. I thought it was just me. Everyone you got.
They clearly just
fancied me. I was going to give him my number.
Maybe they're listening to your every word, David.
But yeah, it is really annoying when somebody just you know, don't even bother to say excuse me, and they start chatting away to Uncle Bob about what's on the telly or something. And
yeah, look, if it's something important, if I don't know, then negotiating for a house, or it's like a job interview over the phone, maybe it's not so bad, but chatting to Uncle Bob about Coronation Street is something else entirely. Next, an elderly man has said he's relieved he didn't have a heart attack after a run-in with a scammer. The phony gardener tried to charge him £2,300 for 2 hours of work. 4 years on, 81-year-old Dennis hopes that telling his story might help other vulnerable people. Will Hollis went to meet him.
Well, I was absolutely shocked. You know, at that time I was suffering from a heart problem, and I just didn't know what to say.
Dennis has always lived an active life. After a career in journalism writing for a local paper, afternoons in his garden kept him busy. But as he got older, caring for his garden became more difficult, and that may have left him vulnerable to con artists.
Being elderly and partly disabled, I needed a little bit of assistance in my garden now. I've got quite a big back garden. Somebody gave me a leaflet, a professional looking job, a glossy leaflet, advertising gardening at a it said it was at a reasonable rate.
Asking the tough questions was a key part of Dennis's job as a journalist. Now he regrets not asking them then.
Where I made my biggest mistake was I didn't ask him how much he was going to charge me for it. And he went into the garden, spent 2 hours there, and he told me he'd knocked me £200 off, and then he said that'll make it £2,300.
Dennis isn't the only older target in Notts. The City Council's Trading Standards team says older people can be easy targets for scammers.
They'll look for telltale signs, they'll share lists of people who they know are elderly and vulnerable, they'll look for overgrown gardens, they'll look for grab rails on people's property, you know, maybe it's the property's in slight disrepair, the net curtains are a little bit older than perhaps other properties on the street, and it gives them possibly a bit of a tip-off that it might be an elderly or vulnerable person living in the property.
We're easy prey, and you know, you feel a bit defenceless when if they get into your property, you feel very vulnerable. And he was a big guy too.
Dennis hopes that by opening up about his experience, he might stop it happening to others.
I just wanted to highlight my experience as an example of what can happen. I know it's an extreme example, but other people could fall victim to the same sort of thing.
Will Hollis, Notts TV.
Danielle Hall is back with your sport headlines.
Thanks, Owen. First up, and Nottingham Forest have been linked with former West Brom midfielder Claudio Jacob. The 31-year-old Argentinian is currently a free agent after being released by the West Midlands club at the end of last season. He was a regular in West Brom's Premier League side before he was released when the Baggies were relegated to the Championship. Notts Now, and manager Harry Kewell said when it comes to coaching mental toughness, it's all down to the player. He spoke after his first game in charge.
It's down to the individual, actually. You know, you can only lead a horse to water. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. But again, these players, if you give them a little bit, like I said, they've had a little taste, so they see what's capable. But like I said, you think it's hard just running. It's not. It's actually harder with the ball. But if you keep the ball and you be smart with it, because when you have the ball, it takes that pressure because you always got to be concentrating not to lose the ball. But you've got to be smart about it, you know. And like I said, there's some incidents in the second half we just wasn't clever enough to shift it, pass it, move it, or we tried to do too little cute little things and all that. And like I said, then you start inviting pressure. And like I said, in this league, you only need really one chance. And like I said, you just need a hopeful ball. And like I said, they get back into the game and then they get on the front foot. And then, you know, a mistake happens. But like I said, it's a learning curve for us. But we're up for the lessons.
Mansfield now, and midfielder Otis Khan has been nominated for the League Two Player of the Month award. Khan signed from Yeovil in the summer and scored a brace for the Stags against Newport on the opening day of the season. The attacking midfielder turned 23 yesterday and has so far scored 3 and assisted 3 in 8 appearances for Mansfield in all competitions so far. Sticking with the Stags, and Mansfield manager David Flitcroft says the Stags will need to prepare hard for their intense run of fixtures after the international break.
Making sure that over the next 10 days we're fully loaded in terms of minutes and data and stats, because we've got a real heavy period. After the international break, we've got a real heavy period, and then October is a monster of a month. 7 big games. So now I was delighted with the lads, and I sort of said to them that it doesn't matter what competition, what day of week it is. You're striving to improve. You need a purpose about your work. You're coming in every day to get better and improve. And it's another winning opportunity tonight. And winning is just something you just can't turn up for. Surgeons have got to be on the game over 300 times a year. Players 50 times a year. We've got to be on our absolute best for 50 times a year and have a real purpose to what you do every day.
Midfielder Timmy Elshnick, who made his Stags debut earlier this week in the Checkatrade Trophy, says his teammates have helped him to feel welcome at Field Mill after signing on loan from Derby County for the season.
They sound like the lads are brilliant. The team is so good. They accepted me so well in the first training yesterday, and just a great group of lads to be around. And I think they're good players as well. I think we've got a very good, strong squad, and I'm looking forward to the season with them.
Tell us about the move.
Yeah, it went down to the last day. I've been in contact with the gaffer a couple of weeks before that. Obviously, I played under him at Swindon last season, so I know him. He knows me. And when he moved to Mansfield, he said, "I'm going to be looking to get you in there just to strengthen the midfield." And we've been in touch, but it was up to the clubs, Derby and Mansfield, to get the deal done. And it went down to the last day, and I'm just glad I'm here. I'm glad they sorted it out, and crack on from here now.
On the latest episode of Team Talk, which is now available on demand, Forest legend Andy Reid thinks manager Aitor Karanka is the right man for the job, despite some fans already wanting the gaffer to be sacked.
I can see people's concerns. I still do believe that Karanka is the right man.
So do I.
I do believe that. I think they've put together a really, really good squad. There's some excellent players there. I think they haven't really been performing, and okay, you can say managers setting teams up and doing whatever, and okay, that plays a part, but players have to take responsibility for their own performances as well, and they haven't really been performing individually that well, which has led to the manager saying, well, if you're not performing well, you're out of the team. So he's had to change the team kind of so many times. They probably haven't had the same starting 11, have they? Maybe after the West Brom game.
A big part of the problem, the lack of a settled side?
Well, yeah, definitely, and there's been such a big turnover of players coming into the club that it's going to take time for them kind of players to gel and to all kind of get rid. But you don't get the time now in modern day football. People start kind of complaining already.
I have to pay for my ticket, you know.
I'm only joking. No, I do think that hasn't helped the fact that, you know, after the West Brom game, you would just be hoping the players would gain a lot of confidence from that, go into the next game and smash it again, and just and you would ideally want the same 11. Obviously, you take the cup games out, but the same 11 starting the next 6 or 7 games, it'd be ideal. But because they haven't been performing, and the type of manager and the type of character that Karanka is, if you're not performing, you're out with the team.
That's online at knottstv.com. When we come back, which Knott's restaurant is among the top 5 in the UK?
Do you want to see one of the most successful British bands when they come to Notts next year? Well, we're giving away 2 tickets to see the Vamps Four Corners tour at the Royal Concert Hall on May the 1st, 2019. To be in with a chance of winning, simply head to knottstv.com/win. Good luck.
Welcome back to the show, singing about your fine county. Alongside me, it's wonderful to welcome two top-notch local talkers who are spooky and kooky, historical tour guide, Kath George, and founder of the Nottingham Ghost Walk, David Cross. It dawns on me that I've not mentioned that, Kath, you've got a sword next to you. Can you just briefly, for the viewers' benefit, say what this sword is?
It is an umbrella.
Ah.
For it is raining outside.
It is raining outside. We're reliably informed by the weather forecast that it should hopefully dry up this evening. But
I have this theory, if you always carry an umbrella, it will not rain on you.
Yeah. And if you carry an umbrella that looks like a sword, you won't get mugged either. Two Knots restaurants have earned a mention in a list of the best eateries in Britain. The Good Food Guide lists 2 Michelin-starred restaurants, Sat Bains, as 4th in the country for the 2nd year running. Meanwhile, Nottingham chef Alex Bond has been named as a chef to watch by the editors just a year after his Al Camila restaurant opened on Derby Road. It got me thinking about what makes a good restaurant, David.
That's a good question. I'm probably not the best person to ask because, you know, people are foodies and they're food snobs and they're into... I'm kind of the opposite.
Okay.
I've got a good friend who loves these kind of restaurants, and they'll go out on a weekend, you know, as a couple and spend £100 a head on this fancy meal that looks like a piece of artwork, and then they're so hungry on the way home they'll stop at a fish and chip shop.
Yeah.
And it's like, there isn't a meal in the world that I would pay £100 a head for. I'm sorry, there's just food isn't, you know, if it's nice food and well cooked, that's fine. Anything else, I'm just not into it because it's more art than food.
But then a lot of places, Kath, go in for more of an experience, maybe, where it's all about the, you know, the service, maybe the location. Would you be perhaps more willing? Well, I've not asked you in the first place if you would spend £100 on a meal.
Oh, I wouldn't, but I have no problem eating £100 worth of meal. I used to have a really good friend who worked on the oil rigs, and he used to spend all his time on the oil rigs actually trying to get dates for when he got back, and 9 times out of 10 he'd get stood up. So he used to ring me up and he'd say, put your posh frock on, Kath. I've got a table booked. I'm not going to tell you at the restaurant. It was a top place. And yeah, he says, if you're still hungry on the way home, I'll get you a bag of chips. You know?
What a deal. Like
yeah, it was the experience and the care that a chef takes, because I trained as a chef. And the care and it is very artistic, and it is to see a really nicely cooked, well prepared piece of food. You know, food is one thing, but to be took care of and waited on and spoilt for an hour or so is very nice.
Now, someone like Sat Bains, I follow him on Instagram, and the care, the precision, the level of preparation that seems to go into it is just incredible. Like, but it is a high pressure environment as well. What's it like working in a kitchen for someone who's never done it and being a chef?
You got to have some real nerves of steel for doing that. Yeah, if you've got a large party, it's about preparation and forward planning, and you know, if you've maybe got to get 100 services out all together, without number 1 being too hot, number 2, you know, number 100 being cold, you need it to be a really well thought out and oiled machine.
Especially,
and there's usually a chef there will make sure that happens.
Especially if, like me, and you're cooking pasta for 2 and you still get the quantity wrong. That's what I always struggle with. Look, where is your favourite foodie haunt? Is fine dining your scene, or are you the king or queen of the all-you-can-eat buffet? What is your favourite place to eat in Notts?
It's up opposite Broadway Cinema, and it's called Dolce, and it's an Italian restaurant, and it really is lovely to go to. It's very ambient, and they do great food in there.
Solville Steakhouse. Because of the steaks, I love steak, and they do the best steaks in Nottingham.
The Ferry Inn, which is in Wilford, and it serves the bestest, biggest steak that you've ever had in your life.
Dino's, because it's good service, pleasant manner, good food.
Probably Annie's Burger Shack store. It's like, it's got a lot of variety for like vegetarians, a lot of variety for like meat eaters, just a lot of things. You can design your own thing. Like, it's a good price as well.
It's called Jamaica Ways, and it sells Caribbean and English food. Very clean, very 5-star. There's seating areas, it's good customer service, and the food is delicious.
Was that Robin Hood walking by in the background there?
Because he gets on everything.
He does, yeah. Before we move on, I'm going to ask each of you top places to eat in Notts. Your favourite place, David?
It's at Rufford Abbey, actually, at Savills Restaurant. They do a wonderful carvery there, which suits me and all my food intolerances just nicely.
Yeah, you can pick your favourite bits and
Lovely
leave out the
atmosphere
rest.
as well, and oldie worldy and history and all that kind of old stone.
Your fave, Kath?
Mod Pizza.
Mod Pizza, I don't know. Is that a historical one as well?
It is very unhistorical, but I did go on holiday to Turin a few years ago. Mod Pizza is the nearest thing I have ever found to a proper Italian pizza. Yeah, they are absolutely mwah.
Oh wow, seal of approval. All right. Next, the Stapleford mountain bikers who teamed up to lovingly restore the trails they train on. The Hemlock Trail Association has spruced up the ramps, bumps and jumps near the Hemlock Stone in Bramcote Hills Park. They joined me on the latest episode of Sports Week, which is now available for you to watch at knottstv.com.
They're great, really. They're just outside of Nottingham, in Stapleford actually, and we work with Broxlow Borough Council to run those free tracks. And as you saw, they're quite short and sweet, but they're absolutely perfect for local mountain bikers and just for an after-work blast.
Toby, you're a regular. What is it that you enjoy about riding there?
Just the local people, yeah. Lots of nice people up there. People enjoy riding with. Do lots of time. If you can go after school before it gets dark, have a nice time up there. Yeah, it's great.
Is it normal, Nico, to have something like that so close to the city, or is that quite rare, would you say?
It is quite rare because there's not that many hills around Nottingham. You've got some great facilities at Sherwood Pines, but you kind of need to get in the car to go there. So that is one of the big benefits of the Hemlock Stone area, is it's about 5 to 6 miles outside of the city. So as long as you have a bike and you're prepared to pedal, you can get there, which is really good. And we get a lot of younger riders like Toby, and we get everything from the young kids to the older dudes. Yeah. And you can drive there and park, or you can ride there. So it's pretty handy in that regard.
No, it's not necessarily been a smooth ride to get these trails to the state they are in now. No. What happened? What's the story?
Well, we've always been riding there, somewhat under the radar, but I mean, there was a deal set over it's been like 20-year long story, but in the last few years, the council actually decided to destroy everything about 2 years ago, because we weren't like a formal entity. We were just a group of people riding bikes on the hill, and they said, hey, listen, if you can create a club, we might listen to you. So we were like, go on, we'll do this. So we've all joined together. We kind of fired them a proposal, and they gave us the green light for like a 1-year kind of rolling scheme.
More from that and an interview with Paralympic swimming champion Ollie Hine, now online at knottstv.com. Now, we are talking reading because a new poll has found that just 3 in 10 parents read stories to their kids every day. That is according to the National Literacy Trust. However, 6 in 10 parents agreed that reading to their child helps them to learn. But busy work schedules, juggling the needs of more than one kid, mean that they can't always read as often as they like. It is a shame, the daily pressures of modern life just getting in the way of something that I think for you, Kath, is probably quite important, reading with young ones. As a storyteller, sorry, I've sprung that on you there.
No, it's not just that. It's important anyway because it sets aside a time each day which is very important for a parental interaction. And even if it's only a storytelling for 10 minutes before they shut their eyes, it's a wonderful thing. I used to read to my bump.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you read?
Anything and everything, newspaper and what have you. But when she was born, even when she was newborn, I still used to just read to her, even though she couldn't understand a word I was saying. But the droning on of my voice sent her to sleep.
I would love if you'd been reading, I don't know, the Financial Times to your bump, and down the line she just gets the Financial Times delivered. It could influence your tastes.
You never see Yasmin without a book in her hand. She's always reading. She reads to me. These phones, we're on our phones all the time, and we'll always read backwards and forwards articles to each other because that interaction just has always been there. And I would say to anybody, make that time. It's really important.
Your perspective, David, on reading with kids?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important, and I think it's a question of priority. I think if you value your kids above everything else, as arguably you should, then you will make the time. And this all pressure and stress and whatever, no, your kids are number one, they should be top of the tree. And my dad very often used to make up stories. Instead of reading a book, he just used to lie down on the other bed in my room and just he'd make up, and he'd continue it. He did one about people smuggling diamonds in tomatoes. I can still remember it this day. And he just made it up on the spot. Because I asked him later on in his life, and he said, "Oh, I just made it up at the time." I thought, wow, how brilliant was it? I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Did that have an influence on your career, you know, becoming a storyteller and someone who tells tales about the city?
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it was. I mean, I was really small. I've only just thought of that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe there's a connection, yeah.
What got you sort of into telling stories?
I honestly can't remember
Really?
a time when I didn't make stories up and write stories. I used to do it on my petite typewriter on the kitchen table.
What would you have written stories about back then?
Well, they were mostly romance because I was a girl, and you know, it was
Not ghost stories.
no, they were more. They weren't ghost stories as such. I mean, I wrote one about a chap who. It was a time when euthanasia was actually legal, but you had to get all of your affairs in order before. So we're going to pinch this story now.
Yeah, well, I'll save you from being copyright defrauded because we've got to go to a break. Don't move a muscle. There's more Nottinghamshire news right after this, and we're finding out which of these can tell the spookiest story. Welcome back to the final part of the show, putting your county in the spotlight every day of the week. Alongside me this evening, history is no mystery for these two historical tour guides, Kath George and David Cross. Kath, I want to talk about an exciting opportunity opening up at the Bell Inn, where there's some caves that are about to be more accessible, right?
Yeah, well, the caves, we've always known about the caves underneath the Bell Inn. The problem with them is the access point.
Okay.
It's basically, at the moment, a 13-foot ladder which descends into total darkness.
Not very health and safety.
No, we did the cave tours there in May. We sort of called it the "You Might Probably Die on This Tour" tour. It was quite popular.
Is that a legal disclaimer?
Yeah, we made them actually sign a disclaimer that if they died, they wouldn't sue us. You know, but since then they've had new manager or new management at Greene King. And we took them on a little tour underneath as well. Now, they have been very supportive of getting the Bell Inn caves opened up. So hopefully, and there might still be problems with this and it might not happen, but at the same time it probably will happen. We will get a proper access point down to the caves.
What are you going to go for, a slide or a fireman's pole? Spiral staircase. That'd be really cool, sort of wrought iron Victorian maybe. That'd be really cool.
Well, it's safety first. Always with me, everything has to be safe, and with Greene King as well.
Absolutely.
But this opens up two opportunities. One for a cave tour, which is a town tour, so a town tour around our caves, because we've got over 840 caves in Nottingham, so we need to get these seen and opened
Make
up.
sure lots of people are seeing them. Look, these two are on first name terms with Nottinghamshire's ghosts and ghouls. They both guide fright fans around the streets of the county, educating them about the spooky tales linked to its history. But who is the most frightening of the two? Which of these two could make even boxer Carl Froch quiver in his boots? Which of these two is the most ghost? Look, I want to find out who can tell me the spookiest story, essentially. David, I would like you to take it away first.
A lot of people see a ghost and don't realise that they've actually seen a ghost until maybe a few moments later or some time later. This story was told to me by a personal friend who was a policeman 20 odd years ago. It's 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Nottingham. He's in a police car with a colleague and they're doing the tour of a pretty quiet city. And they come to the area just outside the Robin Hood statue, which, as you know, is a big flat area about 60 yards by 20. And there's a bit of a dim street light there, and of course the headlights of the car. And as they just pull in parallel to the Robin Hood statue, 2 o'clock in the morning, they see an old lady just by the Robin Hood statue. Looks to be in her 70s, only about 5'2", 5'3", quite small. And they think 2 o'clock in the morning, she's on her own. She looks a bit, you know, she wasn't looking at the statue, she was kind of wandering. We'd better get out and see what, you know, is she lost? And, you know, it's not safe at 2 o'clock in the morning. So they stop the car and my friend gets out and he walks across. And as he's walking from the car across the Robin Hood statue, 15 yards, this old lady just goes behind the statue. So he follows around behind the statue, gets behind the statue, there is no one to be seen. He's got his torch with him, searches the entire area, cannot see a thing. Goes back to his colleague in the car saying, "Did you see that?" He said, yeah, where's she gone? Where's she gone? She's not gone anywhere else. She went behind the statue. I can't. He said, there's nobody there. So they got back in their car and fled.
Well, that's got me going. I'm gulping with fear. Shivering. Kath, what do you think of that?
Oh, that's good, David. I've got hard work following that. Yeah. Well, this one was inspired.
Well, actually, we're gonna keep responding to this. We're gonna have a little breakup. I'm getting quite scared, so we are going to watch something else in just a moment. But we're coming back here to Nottinghamshire folklore, aren't we? You know, Robin Hood statue near the caves. Do you think there is something about those areas that gets people a little bit on edge in the first place, David?
Well, there is. There's also the whole area is sandstone rock. Sandstone, I've heard said, has got some very strange electrical property that is very conducive to seeing ghosts.
Oh, really?
So when you're actually inside it and deep underground in sandstone, all sorts of things can happen.
Sandstone means freaky goings on. We're going to hear from you. You are going to have to try and be more spooky than David in just a moment. But first, with more news from across the county, Danielle Hall spoke to the Nottingham Post business writer, Richard Tressida.
This week, the Nottingham Post has launched its Women in Business Awards. This is really, I think it's really exciting because there are lots of women in Nottingham we don't get to hear about. There are 11 categories plus 2 at the editor's discretion, Mike Sassy, who will come and talk about what he thinks. 5 weeks, if you are interested and you know people who are ideal candidates for the various categories in the Nottingham Post, look on the Nottingham Post Women in Business website page and look at the categories, and if you think there's something appropriate, enter them. There are lots of talented women in this city, and it's a good, and this county, so it's a good opportunity to shout about them.
What kind of categories have we got for people who maybe think they want to apply?
The 2 main ones at the very top are Women in Business, and the other one is Lifetime Achievement. And last year, Lifetime Achievement went to somebody called Veronica Pickering. Now, Veronica is a social worker. She's worked with refugees on the borders of Kenya and Somalia, and so on. Dangerous territory, and I think that takes all the guts. And she won the Women Lifetime Achievement Award. And then we've got Sarah Walker-Smith, who is a senior director of Brown Jacobson, the law firm.
Okay.
And she won the Business Award.
Oh, fantastic. About how many people do you get applying every year? I'm putting you on the spot now.
I don't know the answer to that, but it's many. Many. And we ask other women to come along and judge it.
Oh, fantastic. Sounds brilliant. Well, moving on, because there is some news with the Boots Island site, isn't there?
The Boots Island site, well, I first started writing about the Boots Island site, dare I say, probably almost 30 years ago.
No.
25 years ago. And not much has happened down there. It used to be Boots warehouses.
Yeah.
And I think in the war some of the site was bombed, and the Boots warehouses pushed into the canal. And about 25 years ago, maybe a bit more, Boots sold the site to the City Council. Various schemes were put forward, housing, offices designed by Hopkins, the eminent London architect who designed the Jubilee campus at University and the Inland Revenue site. Nothing came of that in the early 200s. Yet another scheme, the site is now owned by a company called Conga. I don't know how I spell that.
No idea.
And there is a regeneration company advising called Lavinia, I think. I don't know how to pronounce that properly. And it's for housing, student accommodation, and a bit of leisure. It's going on show next week, Tuesday and Wednesday at 38 Carrington Street.
Now, earlier on, David Cross will have entertained you with a spooky story. We've been playing a game. Kath is about to go too, because we are playing this game, our feature, spooky feature, The Most Ghosts. I don't think I did that justice there. I was trying to make it spooky, but I was a bit too chirpy when I introduced it. What we are going to now do is set the mood, get some spooky music going, and Kath, you are going to see if you can improve on David's ghostly story.
Okay, so this is a story from Newstead Abbey. And it was told to me by a tour guide who is there by the name of David. If you visit Newstead Abbey, you might see David wandering the corridors. He's quite solid. He's a tour guide there. He looks quite like a vicar. He's always got a book in his hands. This isn't a Bible, although it looks like one. It's all the information that he has gathered in all the years he's been tour guiding there. What David doesn't know about Newstead Abbey and the families that have lived there really isn't worth knowing at all. As a tour guide, the thing that strikes terror into your heart more than anything else is the one who's been on the tour before with a better tour guide than you. And that is what happened to David. He met a group who had arrived on a coach trip, and amongst them was one rather frumpy lady who had done the tour before. And she was against him right from the start, really. Disappointed that he wasn't dressed as the last tour guide that she had, in the breeches and the leather boots and a nice waistcoat and a shirt. He didn't know of any tour guides like this, but nevertheless. Throughout the tour, all the way through the house, this woman praised this tour guide who had met her at the door, and it had been snowing outside and he'd brought her in, and what he didn't know about the family, and with such warmth and knowledge. It was unbelievable, this tour was. And it was really starting to get on David's nerves after a while, as you can well imagine. And now they find themselves in the library. The library is full of all kinds of mysterious books, a lot of collections from the Byron collection. There's a painting of Sir John with a great beard, who he's laying in his tomb behind the desk as you enter the Abbey. You see him doing his accounts. We can tell you all of these wonderful stories, and as David is doing just that, this woman who had been on the tour before started pointing at a picture which is displayed in the library at Newstead Abbey. You can see it there to this day. That's him. That's the chap who took us on the tour. And she pointed to a portrait of Joe Murray. Joe Murray was one of the manservants for the Wicked Lord. He was there when Lord Byron was there as well, and he remained in service. That's it, I'm done.
You've been just in time. I can't decide who the most ghost is. It's both of you. You're both the most ghosts. Thank you for watching. See you later.